East Kent Radio Society, Memories Through the Decades. The First Stirrings. The earliest mention I have found of the East Kent Radio Society is back in 1922, when the Ramsgate Wireless Club proposed a name change. Article reads, Ramsgate Wireless Club, which it is proposed to name the East Kent Radio Society, now in formation, is to give a public wireless demonstration at 7:30 p.m. on Wednesday next, September 20th, at the Foresters Hall, Meeting Street, Ramsgate. Various amateurs in the district have kindly promised to transmit speech and musical selections for the occasion. A programme is not being published of the musical items which will be transmitted, as certain of these may be unavoidably interrupted by other wireless transmissions in progress at the same time. Tickets, for which a nominal charge of 1 shilling and 3pence, including tax, will be made to defray the expenses, and can be obtained from the organiser, Mr. Harold F. Nelson, 15 Ellington Road, Ramsgate, or from the many shopkeepers in the town displaying bills to that effect. The name must have stuck for a couple of years at least, as by 1924, when one of the founders passed, the name was still in use. Mr. Samuel Vaughan was a local post office engineer. The obituary on the right states that the funeral took place on a Tuesday at St. Mary's Cemetery, and his death occurred suddenly on February the 20th, and he was 50 years old, well known in the radio circles at Dover, being one of those that formed the East Kent Radio Society, and was actually talking to a friend on the subject when he suddenly passed away. In 1952, the East Kent Radio Society was long gone, long enough that the name could come back into use by a new group. In the Whitstable Times on the 23rd of August, it was announced that there would be a new group formed. Article reads, On Tuesday last, Mr. W. E. Nutton, G6NU, President of the Medway Radio Transmitters Society, paid a visit to Whitstable, and there met a representative gathering of radio transmitters and shortwave listeners from Canterbury, Faversham and Whitstable. As a result of the meeting, it was decided to try to form a local society to be known as the East Kent Radio Society. Any radio enthusiast who would be interested in such a society is asked to communicate with the temporary secretary, H. W. Robinson, G2 BB2 of 40 Acres Road. And by November, the group had a local patron, the Mayor of Canterbury. At the last meeting of the East Kent Radio Society held at the Fleur-de-Lis, Canterbury, it was announced that the Mayor of Canterbury, Councillor J. R. Barrett, had consented to become patron of the society. The evening was devoted to obtaining the views of members as to future meetings. Among the many suggestions were television construction, frequency modulation, model control, lecturettes and technical lectures, Morse instruction and general assistance in order to qualify for the amateur transmitting licence, films to illustrate various aspects of radio, disc and tape recording. The next meeting will be held on Tuesday, November the 18th at the Faversham Grammar School, when G3 FCT will give a lecture on the history and development of electronic tubes. Moving forward to the 1960s. The 60s had a great vibe for the club. In 1963, the Whitstable Times reported that you had beaten the Thanet Radio Society in their own quiz night. Article reads, Thanet Radio Society lost a quiz contest at Broadstairs on Friday by 2 points. Winners were the team of 4 from East Kent Radio Society, Canterbury, who scored a total of 52 points. The visiting team included Bob McIntyre from Holland, who was visiting James Foster of Y College, who provided the quiz questions. In 1966, a great year for football, Mr. D. Williams, chairman of EKRS, is mentioned as attending a gathering of champion hams in Ramsgate. Article reads, Champion hams. Thanet radio amateur Mr. Paul O'Brien of Broadstairs won a cup for contacting the most Belgian hams in March, and the runner-up was Mr. J. Brooker of Margate. They received their awards at the 19th annual dinner at Ramsgate on Saturday of the Thanet Radio Society. Senior and junior cups for construction competitions were won by Mr. M. Perkins of Margate and Mr. M. Denny of Broadstairs. On exhibition at the dinner was a novel noughts and crosses machine and an electronic typewriter which gave out Morse signals when the keys were pressed, both of which were built by Mr. J. Andrews of Margate. Toast of the Society was proposed by Mr. A. Milne, past president of the Radio Society of Great Britain, and Mr. N. Cramp replied. Guests were welcomed by Mr. R. Bastow, and Mr. D. Williams, East Kent Radio Society chairman, replied. Moving forward to the 1980s, while the 1970s held nothing in the papers for EKRS, the 1980s were a busy time. In 1986, you took part in the RSGB's National Field Day and came away with the Arthur Watts Trophy, proving that low-power VHF can be a lot of fun. And the article reads, the East Kent Radio Society took first place in the National Field Day organised by the Radio Society of Great Britain, in which about 60 clubs took part. During a weekend in July, an array of aerials was put up at Bishopston, and the members manned the equipment for 24 hours, scoring nearly 500 points more than their nearest rivals. The club will be presented with the Arthur Watts Trophy by the Radio Society of Great Britain. Club meetings are held on the first and third Thursdays of each month at the Cabin, Kings Road, Herne Bay, and visitors are welcome. In 1987, a member of your club took part in what would later become Mills on the Air. National Mills Day had been established in 1984, and it seems that there were a trio of mills in the Kent region that were activated. There are a great deal of newspaper clippings for the 1980s, and I have included those on this flash drive for anyone that might like to go through them at a later date. The 1990s brought change to the club, and on the 11th of January it was reported that the club had a new home, the Canterbury High School. The first talk to be given at that venue was that of local weatherman Rob Lebec, who was speaking on the use of satellites in weather forecasting, and the secretary was recorded as being Mr. Brian Tutt. Can you remember that talk? Was it good? EKRS was mentioned in a number of articles from the local carnival, along with the Scouts and other organisations throughout the 1990s. But the final mention that I've located is in April of 1999, and this is where the newspaper's site runs out, I'm afraid. But it is a lovely article about Marconi Day and what your plans were for that day. And the article reads, Waves stretch across the strait. Members of the East Kent Radio Society, based in Herne Bay, are getting ready to celebrate the centenary of the first radio transmission across the English Channel. The celebrations will mark the day that Marconi was contacted. He was radioed at the South Foreland Lighthouse, Dover, by French radio inventor Branly from Herne Bay's twin town, Wimereux, in France. Paul Nicholson of the EKRS said, This is a major event in radio history, and there has been a lot of interest by radio groups all over the world. Civil dignitaries from Dover, Deal and Wimereux will attend the reenactment on April 24th. Marconi's granddaughter, Princess Pessa Marconi, is also expected to join the celebrations. There will be demonstrations by the Royal Signals and the Territorial Army, and broadcasts by amateur television and radio stations. The White Cliffs Experience Dover will also be holding an exhibition of the event from April 22nd to 25th. Thank you for your time this evening.